Picture the rumble of jet engines rolling across an Oxfordshire dawn, the same deep-chested roar many of you heard in your youth when Vulcans or lightnings cracked the skater. Now imagine a lone guardsman, no medals on show, no swagger, stepping off a transport van and melting into the bustle of RAF Bryce Norton. To most on the flight line, he's just another gray figure, a ceremonial soldier out of place among the hotshot pilots. Yet hidden beneath those quiet footsteps is a story of F-35 cockpits, classified missions, and a decision that had changed more lives than he'll ever mention aloud. Stay with us as we uncover why this veteran traded supersonic thrills for silent watch, and how one flawless landing humbled an entire squadron. If tales of duty, dignity, and second chances still set your pulse racing, tap the like button, subscribe, and ring the bell, because the best stories don't fade with time, they deepen. RAF Bryce Norton. Late Friday afternoon, jet fuel vapor shimmered in the light like summer haze, and the Flightline Orchestra ground crews barking checks. Typhoon engines spooling up played its usual anthem of purpose. From the last troop van stepped a single figure who drew no notice at all. Lance Sergeant Callum Fraser wore slate gray fatigues instead of a palace tunic. His beret sat square, his olive duffel rode one shoulder, and every movement was so economical it seemed to erase him from the scene. He signed the arrivals board with neat handwriting, slipped toward temporary billets, and would have vanished completely if curiosity hadn't found him first. "Mate, you logistics?" a young flight officer asked the question as if he already knew the answer. Aviator sunglasses clung to his nose, though he was indoors. "No," Callum said, voice soft but crisp. "Attached for the exercise." Before the officer's nod could settle, Flight Lieutenant Jason Kemp strode in. Kemp's RAF blues fit like bespoke tailoring pilot wings, flashing with every step. He stopped, took in the Army fatigues, and raised his voice for an audience. Didn't know the guards sent costume parties to flight camp. "What's next?" sword drills on the runway. Laughter rippled. Callum studied Kemp as though examining a museum piece, then returned the clipboard to its hook without comment. Kemp pressed on. "Coldstream right. Standing still all day must be exhausting. Bet you lads salute more than you breathe." "We do more than stand guard," Callum answered. "Volume unchanged." "Sure you do. I'll show you the simulators. No wax statues, but you'll manage." The hangar door banged open. Squadron leader Ellie Grant entered. Hair iron gray, eyes iron sharper. Briefing in 10 Lieutenant Kemp. Less theater, more prep. The crowd dispersed, but Kemp smirked over his shoulder, certain he had won something. Grant's gaze lingered on the quiet guardsman who had absorbed every barb without flinching. In her experience, men who wasted no breath on defense usually had very little left to prove. Later at lunch, someone finally asked Callum what he flew. "Not anymore," he replied, and conversation skittered to safer ground. In uniformed life, those two words hinted at medals or ghosts, and no one cared to poke either. Saturday dawned brittle and bright, a sky clear enough to magnify every sound. In the mess hall, Callum sat alone, methodically turning eggs and toast into fuel invisible, until Kemp's storytelling cut through the clatter. "So I tell the instructor, 'Sir, if you want 5G formation, warn the passenger to hold his breakfast.'" Laughter on cue. A cadet eager for inclusion nodded toward the solitary guardsman. "Think that bloke's ever seen a cockpit?" Kemp's shark smile found blood. "Him, the fastest thing he's ridden is a London taxi. Probably practices salutes in the mirror." More laughter, louder now. Callum sipped his tea. Silence, not surrender, settled around him like armor. Kemp strutted over to slid onto the opposite bench and lowered his voice just enough to make it intimate and cruel. "What are you doing here, Sergeant?" "Missed your castle shift, same as you," Callum said. "To learn, perhaps, remind people what respect looks like." The room froze. Kemp opened his mouth for another punchline, but Squadron Leader Grant's chair scraped back with finality. "Flight Lieutenant," she called, "eat. Some of us came to collaborate, not audition for comedy." Kemp retreated. The jokes resumed, but thinner fraying at the edges. By mid-morning, an apologetic admin officer shuffled to Callum's elbow. "Simulator slots were tight," he explained. "Would Sergeant Fraser mind observing from the tech booth?" Instead, Callum nodded. No complaint, no surprise. Men like him learned early that expectations often arrive dressed as disappointment. From the control tower, Grant watched the sideline guardsmen drift toward the perimeter, eyes following every takeoff with the understanding of someone fluent in jet noise. Doubt tugged her. She lifted a secure handset and called Northwood. "Service record for Coldstream Guards, Fraser Callum." A pause, then, ma'am, are you certain read it? Lightning Delta Trials, first NATO combat certification on the F-35. Decorations thick as a flight manual. Voluntary transfer to ceremonial duties. Grant set the receiver down with unusual care. Outside, the man the pilots mocked for polish had once landed on carrier decks at night in weather that made radars lie. She watched him another moment and made a decision. Tomorrow would not unfold according to the posted schedule. The sun slipped behind hangars, leaving RAF Bryce Norton washed in sodium amber. Callum sat in his barracks corner polishing boots in slow circles when Squadron Leader Grant appeared at the flap. Fancy a walk. They strolled the perimeter road floodlights, casting their shadows long against the tarmac. Grant broke the quiet first. You didn't correct Kemp. I've never had luck correcting men like that, Callum replied. Time teaches better than words. Why leave the cockpit at all, she pressed. He told her, a North Sea intercept drill weather turning vicious, his decision to duck under the storm. It saved the mission profile, but wake turbulence flipped his wingman. The other pilot ejected safely, yet the inquiry demanded a scapegoat. Cleared on paper, Callum found himself guilty in the mirror. I quit needing to prove I could fly, he said. Grant stopped beneath a buzzing security lamp. Do you miss it every time I hear a jet break the sky? Then be on the flight line at 10:00 tomorrow, she said. Don't plan to leave early. Back in her office, she lifted another phone voice, low but steady. Strike Command, I'm calling in that favor. Callum slept lightly, dreaming of afterburners. At dawn, he donned a flight suit he had folded years ago. Fabric still held the faint scent of hydraulic fluid. He walked to the flight line well before the others, standing near a maintenance shed out of the way, exactly where recent memory expected him to be. Pilots filed past without notice until Kemp clambered up a typhoon ladder and spotted the solitary figure below. Unable to resist, he shouted, Still on parade duty. Sergeant Mechanics laughed. Callum looked skyward instead, reading contrails like lines of poetry. In the tower, Grant checked her watch. 5 minutes. Over the radios crackled routine chatter until a deeper thunder rose beyond the southern tree line, low and imminent. Ground crew peered up, puzzled. That's not on the schedule, someone muttered. The sound sharpened, predatory whine of an F-35 Lightning II. It sliced overhead in a reconnaissance pass so smooth it felt rehearsed, banked, then lined up for runway 09. Grant keyed the mic. Lightning 27 winds calm, cleared to land. The jet kissed the center line, no flare, no flourish, rolled to a halt. Canopy up, helmet off, Callum Fraser descending the ladder with unhurried grace. Silence flooded the flight line. Every joke, every assumption fell away like chaff in a burner's wake. Tomorrow had indeed arrived early, and nothing at Bryce Norton would ever sound quite the same again. The hush that blanketed the flight line after Callum's immaculate touchdown lasted only a heartbeat before the radios erupted with frantic queries, but not a soul moved. Every mechanic, cadet, and seasoned flyer stood riveted as the quiet guardsman descended the ladder and walked utterly unhurried toward the gathering crowd. Flight Lieutenant Kemp, legs suddenly weightless, stepped forward to regain control of the narrative, but found his voice trapped somewhere behind a racing pulse. Squadron Leader Grant arrived first, her tone surgical. Favor executed, Lieutenant. The pilot you dismissed yesterday flew Lightnings when most of us were still studying air law. She turned to the assembled personnel and, without raising her volume, stripped every assumption bare. Callum Fraser had logged more combat hours on the F-35 than the rest of them combined. He had chosen ceremonial service, not been relegated to it, and he had endured their ridicule in silence because professionalism does not bargain for respect, it earns it quietly. The words settled over the tarmac heavier than jet wash. Kemp tried to speak, but Grant cut him short with a single sentence that felt like a verdict. Volume is not competence. Eyes swung back to Callum. He neither basked nor gloated, offering only a small nod that seemed to acknowledge the aircraft more than the acclaim. In that moment, every loud joke uttered at his expense felt childish, and the senior NCOs in the crowd recognized a subtler lesson. Real authority arrives on silent wings. A young cadet finally broke the trance by saluting. Others followed, a ripple of belated courtesy washing outward until even Kemp's shaky hand crept to his brow. Callum returned none of it. Respect, he believed, was not a debit and credit ledger, but the gesture etched itself into the day like contrail against blue sky. Somewhere in the tower, an operations clerk quietly amended the exercise roster, adding one name back to the active column while erasing a dozen lines of arrogance. No briefing could have scrubbed so clean. With the lightning secured and the crowd dispersed, activity shifted to Hangar 3, where afternoon debriefs were normally routine affairs. Today, the benches filled early pilots sitting straighter than usual, while ground crews lingered at the doors. Callum entered last, still in his flight suit, but once again silent, and took a seat at the edge until Grant beckoned him forward. Sergeant Fraser will lead the sortie review, she announced. The projector clicked on, showing HUD footage from the unannounced pass glide slope, perfect energy margins textbook. Callum spoke for the first time to the group voice, even almost gentle. He explained that angle of attack nuances, crosswind micro-corrections, and a throttle-back sequence designed to preserve the engine for rapid turnaround lessons that transcended airframes. No flourish, no jargon, bombs, just distilled experience offered like water to the thirsty. Kemp asked the first question, why no flare on rollout? The reply was neither rebuke nor triumph. Flare impresses observers. Consistency saves airframes. A murmur of appreciation circled the room. When the briefing ended, Grant dismissed everyone but held Kemp and Callum back. Kemp, cheeks flushed, managed, "I'm sorry. I didn't ask." Callum met his eyes steady as level flight. "Curiosity costs nothing, Lieutenant. You'll need it more than bravado when clouds hide the horizon." The words landed softer than their truth, but Kemp nodded something heavier than embarrassment, settling into humility. Grant handed both men fresh orders, joint module guards air integration starting at dawn. Fraser instructs, Kemp flies. The symbolism was clear. The humbled student would learn at the feet of the man he mocked, and the quiet teacher would regain the cockpit, not by demanding it, but by embodying why he belonged there. As they left the hangar together, Kemp broke the silence. "May I walk with you?" Sergeant Callum simply said. "Call me Callum in the air. We're just pilots." The simple camaraderie felt like the first genuine thing stated all weekend. Sunday evening draped Bryce Norton in burnished gold, the day's last sorties, long since logged when a nondescript staff car rolled to the transient barracks.
A simple click on that subscribe button might seem small, but to me, it means the world. If this content made you smile, feel inspired, or just brought you a little joy, hit that sub button and stay with me for more good vibes ahead.
Inside, Callum folded his flight suit with ritual precision, stowed it beside the immaculate boots, and slung the olive duffel that had been his only companion on arrival. Outside, a small knot of young flyers waited, not ordered, simply unwilling to let the moment pass among them, the cadet whose tentative salute had started the ripple. Kemp stood too, fatigue jacket, off-shoulder, humility worn more comfortably than yesterday's swagger. Grant emerged from HQ paperwork in hand, cross-qualification, approved ceremonial duties, retained operational currency, reinstated at Callum's request for occasional need. She handed him the envelope. "You set a standard, Sergeant. Don't let it gather dust." Callum tucked the papers away, then addressed the semicircle of faces. He said nothing of dignity or lessons. Instead, he posed a quiet challenge. Next time you see a silent man on the line, it assumed competence until proven otherwise. A collective nod answered him. Kemp stepped forward, hand outstretched. They shook wordless, contract sealed. As the car pulled away, the cadet whispered, "He didn't just fly today, he taught us to listen." The airfield lights flicked on, casting long beams that made the parked F-35 gleam like a monument to restraint. In the tower, an ops officer updated the exercise log, outcome unscheduled, instructional sortie. Morale elevated, inter-unit cohesion significantly improved. Long after the car's taillights merged with the dusk, the sound of that perfect landing lingered in memory, not a roar, but an after-echo of quiet mastery reminding every witness that true strength seldom needs to raise its voice. Monday's sunrise found the airfield already humming as Guard's Air Integration Module Alpha came online. Kemp met Callum on the apron, where a twin-seat Typhoon waited its canopy, glinting like a challenge. There were no jokes now. Kemp's greeting was a crisp morning instructor as he passed over the flight card, hands steady but eyes searching. Callum reviewed the sortie plan, high-altitude formation, energy maneuvers, touch and go war work, then added 3 handwritten lines about spatial awareness and silent cockpit discipline. At 0612, they taxied tower clearance crisp in the headsets. Callum handled takeoff, guiding the jet to 25,000 feet before yielding controls. Kemp flew the pattern with textbook precision, yet every radio call carried an undertone of wanting to be worthy. Callum noted the tension and keyed intercom lieutenant breathing check inhale on the turn, exhale on the roll. The simple cue loosened shoulders and tightened geometry. The next aileron roll snapped as clean as a metronome. Over the North Sea, they practiced pairs maneuvers with a second typhoon. Callum's calm cadence, counting beats rather than barking orders, allowed Kemp to anticipate instead of react. After 90 minutes, they returned landing with wheels kissing centerline and mirror image. Debrief in Hangar 2 was almost intimate. Callum's critique used pencil sketches on a clipboard, not red ink on a projector. Skill solid, he concluded, but merry skill to intent. Fly to serve, not to impress. Kemp's sweat-damp hair, plastered to forehead, absorbed each word the way novices once absorbed his own. Around them, younger aircrew watched a new dynamic take shape, swagger being melted down and recast as steel. 2 days later, a squall front barreled in from the Atlantic, squeezing the exercise schedule into chaos. Grant reassigned Callum Kemp to a live diversion drill scramble, divert to RAF Valley, navigate low cloud and gusting crosswinds. In the ready room, Kemp glanced at the weather radar and swallowed. The storm's signature resembled the cell that had ended Callum's frontline career. They launched at 14:07 into roiling gray. 10 minutes outbound turbulence hit hard, slamming the typhoon like a fist. Kemp's initial correction overpitched. The HUD fluttered amber warnings. Callum's voice cut through with measured clarity. Ease off, breathe. Reference 5 degrees nose up, 3 degrees right, bank power 92. The jet steadied. Radio chatter crackled with other flights diverting. Some pilots audibly rattled. Callum toggled a discrete frequency and toggled Kemp through a stair-step descent beneath the shear layer, using horizon slivers visible between cloud teeth. A sudden downdraft knifed them. Kemp fought instinct to yank the stick and instead followed the quiet prompts beside him. They broke into coastal sunlight 2 miles seaward of Valley's runway. Tower clearance came coughing through static. Kemp set the jet down in gusts that veered 15 knots off center, main wheels bowing but holding true. Shutdown complete, he sagged in the seat. Callum simply asked, "What did the storm teach?" Kemp breathed, that calm as a control input. Callum smiled, small approving, and for the first time since Friday's mockery, the lieutenant's grin returned, tempered now with gratitude. The exercise concluded Friday eve training with a joint after-action in the base lecture theater. Charts showed decreased sortie deviations and a measurable uptick in inter-unit cooperation. Grant highlighted the numbers, but everyone knew the real metric was intangible. When Callum's name appeared on the slide headed key contributors, the room's applause rose before anyone recalled protocol. Kemp took the podium briefly. My lesson: ask before you assume. Listen before you speak.
At the next timetable. There's a couple of exciting changes. So this year we are introducing food and nutrition into the timetable. We know that it's been feedback in terms of our curriculum about moving into options with regards to the technology. We have a food lab, and so we will be now timetabling on this timetable a food and nutrition lesson, 1 lesson per week, and that will be led by the PE department, and the aim is to actually marry up the EK's food and nutrition to a healthy lifestyle element of the curriculum. So we're really excited that we're able to start that provision with current thinkers going into year 7. They're very standard lesson. They have 5 lessons of English per week, 5 lessons of maths per week. So they have a lesson of English and maths every day. So in terms of the familiar, they will be very familiar with the literacy and numeracy focus every day from year 6. We're really pleased that carries on into year 7. We have a lot of contact time with both English and maths. There are 4 lessons of science per week, which again, is a really good grounding in science. And they move into history and geography, where they will have 2 lessons per week, music, art, drama, PE, games, swimming, MFL, food, and computer science. They'll have 1 lesson per week. And MSc English and tutor time is obviously a big part of their curriculum as well. So we'll be talking towards the end of the presentation about how their school day will actually look. We also don't share timetables right now, particularly, but you'll see the school day. They have tutor time at the end of every day, which is really nice for us to touch base with the students at the end of the day with their tutor. How's the day gone? Time to communicate any issues that may have come up during the day. So these are the subjects that students will study in Year 7, and again, quite similar to what they will have experienced in Year 6 and in the junior school. This term, all of the senior school departments have been involved in a curriculum review. They've been looking at the topics that they're teaching, the sequencing they're teaching. We're really lucky in and all through school. The conversations, of course, happen with the transition with Year 5 and 6 and into 7 about topics that they have already and will be familiar with, to then build on that. So students don't come into Year 7 feeling like they're doing the same topics again. So all departments have undertaken that curriculum review this term. They were looking at the topics that they teach. The sequencing of them is particularly important. So in understanding how students learn and understanding that they only will know what is familiar to them. And so learning must build on their prior learning. That prior learning must be embedded in order for them to then move on. And so in departments, they've been working on what we call a spiral curriculum, which draws back the skills that they'll need once they get to the end of Key Stage 4 for their external exams at GCSE. But it isn't just about the exams, of course, that's very, very important. But the aim of the exam, any exam, is to try to assess whether a student has become proficient in that subject. And so the best way to think about it is proficiencies in the subject. So when you spiral back in history, what makes a good historian is their ability to argue cause and consequence, is their ability to see and analyse the source. They are skills that they will need to be able to do should they decide to do GCSE history, but they are also skills that a proficient historian would be able to do. And so the departments are spiral back their curriculum to expose students from Year 7 and of course in junior school too, how they can build on those skills to get them ready for Key Stage 4 and hopefully into Key Stage 5 when they begin their A-level options as well. So the curriculum is, designed in such a way that they are becoming proficient in the skills they need to move through into Year 7, Year 8, Year 9 and on to their examination years. And of course it's focused on the acquisition of skills and knowledge, which opens up the opportunities at Key Stage 4. So we have redone all of our curriculum maps. These will be familiar to you from the junior school. I really hope this QR code works. It's one of these moments where you will scan it and it does on here as well. I've tested it a number of times, so I really hope that it does. And again, we'll be sharing this presentation in the newsletter, so please don't feel if it's not
have multiple scans at the same time.
Yeah, it will, you don't have to write anything down, it will be shared with you. We're getting a document.
No, okay, it's lovely. Yeah, right.
Yes.
Hooray.
That's actually the first time QR code's ever worked for me, so progress. Yeah. So please, this is very detailed, okay? I think it's about 27 pages long, so it's certainly not for, for reading now, but what this shows you is term by term through the year what your child will study in each of the subjects on offer in the senior school. As a parent, particularly as students move through senior school, getting information out of your children can become a little bit more difficult, I would say. What are we doing at school? It's all going fine. Everything's fine until it's not fine. It's very binary, isn't it? It's fine and then it's not fine. But how can we support them in actually what they're studying in their subjects? If they are struggling in English, in maths, in science, whatever subject it might be, what the curriculum that's really helpful for you as a parent to see is you know exactly what they're studying at that time. What we've added into the curriculum maps as well, which I think is really, really important for parents to see, for students to see, but also as teachers for us to be cognitive of, is how does each topic build on prior learning? So what is it you would expect your child to be able to now do that's then unlocked in term 2 and then unlocked further in term 3? So hopefully those curriculum maps are helpful in giving you an understanding of what's going on in each lesson. And if there's anything in the academic side here, please do let us know. But this has been the sort of body of work that we've been doing this term to make this information much more accessible for parents. So you can see, we used to share them term by term, but I think the annual overview helps you to see how that learning sequence and how it builds on from term 1 to term 3. But please don't feel like you've got to put this down. This will be shared in the Year 6 newsletter, this whole presentation. So I just wanted to drill down on the core curriculum to give you a sense of, again, how it's built. So the Key Stage 3 curriculum in all of our subjects is of course spiralled back from GCSE and the skills that they will need to do. But in GCSE English, ultimately they'll be assessed on prose, drama, non-fiction and poetry. They're the 4 aspects of their English exam. But again, to really emphasise the point, the exams are really important, but also what would you expect students to be studying in English are these sort of core competencies, which is what the exam will eventually assess. And so what the curriculum then does is it's broken into 4 parts for each year group, year 7, 8 and 9. And they focus on those 4 skills. So in year 7, students start with prose, they start with Bone Sparrow, then they move into Shakespeare, they do Julius Caesar, then non-fiction is Leaders of Tomorrow, and then they move on to the poetry section. And the curriculum maps are just more detailed versions of this. So you can see exactly what they're studying, the key content, how they're going to be assessed at the end. Similarly with maths, you will be familiar with White Rose. So one of the ways in which the transition into senior school becomes more familiar than unfamiliar is that the maths department can also teach the White Rose curriculum. There's been, again, a lot of work between both junior and senior school with ensuring that transition is as seamless as it can be, build on their prior learning. And so what sometimes students will say, I've already done algebra, like it's something that gets done, you tick it off. What they will do as they move through their learning is it becomes, of course, progressively more challenging. And so they're using their understanding from year 6. They have an introduction to algebra, function machines and substitution, which is then built in year 7 into algebraic thinking, algebraic technique, and then reasoning with algebra as they move into year 9. And so this is what I mean by the spiral curriculum. Students will come back to topics as they move through Key Stage 3 and 4, so that they are then, they're building on their prior knowledge, that it's not unfamiliar, and the more they're exposed to it, the better they become at it, and that sort of habitual learning. We are really excited that I know Miss Baker has had some conversations with parents in year 6 about our maths provision and some of the possibilities that we may have in the curriculum from August. So we are going to offer an accelerated maths group. So teaching in maths is setted, teaching in English is setted. So the top set in maths will have the opportunity to complete a GCSE early. So the plan would be that they would do their GCSE coverage in year 7, year 8 and year 9, and they would sit their GCSE at the end of year 9. They would then do a further maths GCSE that they would carry on from into year 10, the whole of year 10 and the first part of year 11, and they would sit their further maths GCSE in the November of year 11. And for the remaining months in year 11, they would cover the statistics module or statistics specification, and they would do the statistics GCSE in the June of year 11. So they would leave in year 11 with 3 maths qualifications. Now, just a few caveats to this. Sitting GCSEs early is not for, every child. Universities don't know that a student would have sit it necessarily early. It is not, you want a student to try to get their best possible grade, and for many students that will be that they do the traditional 5 years and then they do their GCSE at the end of the year. If they are a student who would like to move into maths, maybe at A-level and on to university, they don't have to have 2 extra qualifications in maths either. Okay, so we will, as students come in August, Miss Bacon will be liaising with parents, talking with you about how this will look. The plan is that students will do a baseline assessment, they do already in maths, to determine the setted groups, which would then determine the top set and the plan for an accelerated group. What we may see with that accelerated group is that there are a number of students who we think are capable of doing that, and so whilst we have a limit in class size of 24, it may be that it's appropriate that class size could be 25 or 26, dependent on what we think in terms of their capability of being on that accelerated programme. But this is something new that we're offering. We think it's really, really exciting that they have the...
Thank you so much for watching till the end. Your support truly means the world to me. If this video brought you value or resonated with you in any way, feel free to leave a little comment or hit subscribe so we can keep sharing more moments together. See you in the next one.